What a way to end the year. Yesterday, Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, a character that I've oftentimes mentioned in a relatively positive light, announced her intention to form an exploratory committee to run for president, which is effectively announcing without officially announcing that you're running for president. And there were a lot of different reactions. You had some Democrats who welcomed her, throwing her hat into the ring. You had Republicans who went and took the Native American controversy and blew it up in light of the announcement. But as I watched her announcement video and then I also looked at some of the reactions online, I tried to think to myself, again, as someone that typically is a supporter of hers for the most part, as far as her being one of the more prominent progressives in public office at this point, is her running a good thing? And it depends on factors that are still not entirely known currently. So, one of the things that will definitely matter is if Bernie decides to run, which there's all indications that he will. And if that's the case, and they have this primary where they I think we've been over this before, the delegates in the Democratic primary are split by the popular vote. I don't like the idea of the two of them running and then messing it up for each other, and that's been a big cause of concern of mine. So we've sat here and looked at this large, very large, I mean, just completely ridiculous Democratic primary, just the name of candidates, the names rather that we're seeing at this point. You have all these different governors and senators that nobody except for maybe me and three other people are even familiar with, and they think they have a shot. But she definitely, in my view, has a better chance than most other people. Um, and the more amusing parts of this story was how you had people who said uh, her Native American controversy would come back to bite her with this campaign. But when I looked online on Twitter and these other websites, I saw reactions from people to her running, and the only people who seem to ever bring up anything about that particular, I guess you call it scandal, but not really, are people that openly admit on their own profiles that they're Trump supporters. So it's one of those things where the media and I think a lot of commentators try to present a particular facet of who an individual is as this big, huge story when most people who think it's a big story weren't going to vote for her anyway. Same thing with Bernie and the what was it 300,000 jets or airplanes, and they were trying to say he was a hypocrite on Fox because he doesn't take a train to get around the world quickly. Um, that's another story that would fuel the flames of people who already don't like that particular politician. But for regular individuals, we don't care. Or rather, people who were either indifferent or planning on supporting her nonetheless. I do think that if Sanders gets involved, they'll probably meet and then she'll tell him which one of them is going to stay in the race. And one of them will hopefully bow out before the voting actually starts next year, which that makes it seem even more shocking that it would come this early because we're still 14 months away from the Iowa caucus. If it's still in February of the presidential election year, as I'm remembering from the previous time. But also of noteworthiness is that when I watched her video, it gave me chills. The one where she was talking about growing up and all of this, because it reminded me of Hillary's introduction ad for the 2016 campaign. And it's got a problem where they talk about the personal life, which to an extent is all right, but they don't actually discuss any policy specifics. I didn't do a video about it, but when Julian Castro, the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Obama, announced his, forming of an exploratory committee, that was someone else who basically put up this video where he sits in front of a camera. His was a little less inspired, just him talking. But it's the same thing where they talk about their backgrounds and then they just completely live out any policy specifics. And this is kind of disturbing for me because I thought of Warren for quite a while as someone that was, you know, more serious about Medicare for all or free college or any of the progressive ideas that a lot of the pseudo progressives like Booker and Harris weren't so willing to embrace openly. They might seem as if they could kind of be lended toward that position, but they have this thing where they don't want to. They're still trying to appeal to that moderate crowd, as if that group even is that plentiful anymore. I remember when Flake, it was back in I think March of this year, Jeff Flake, the senator that's retiring in 2 days from Arizona, when he went to New Hampshire, they had asked him about, if the prospects of him running, the 2020 primary challenge against Trump, and he had said something to the effect of, "Well, the Democrats have went so far left and the Republicans have gone so far right that there are people in the middle who are desperately seeking something else." And it was really amusing, because if you look at something like Medicare for All, which is supported by most people, um, and then also, just any social issue except for the death penalty, like gay marriage, whether you like it or not, most people, I think it's like 66%, 65 support that particular, policy. But these are the kind of things that were not in line with Flake and his positions, and thus had made him claiming that he's representing the middle person when a majority of people did not even back anything that he himself was in favor of. Seem all the more comical. Um, there are some people who are saying that Warren doesn't have a chance. I would love to see Flake run and just get destroyed and demolished, and half of that would be because he's running against an incumbent president, which is always, an uphill battle in every conceivable way. The second one is he's too in line with Trump. Um, he sat here and he tried to pretend as if getting upset by the mean tweets was some serious difference of policy. Um, and I actually had criticized Warren for that when I watched the ad, because she doesn't speak about any of the policy specifics that would cause someone like me, who was disenfranchised with both the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee last time around, to actually think, hey, this person's different from the last person that was nominated. But it's the same kind of video. Go watch the video. It's her showing all these pictures of her family members, which, if this was an autobiography, would be fine, but you're announcing that you're running for president. We don't want to hear about your personal story. We say, well, to Dirk. Dirk, I was missing you yesterday. I was thinking about doing a stream about some other important events, and I just kind of said I'll put those off and do this because it's what everybody's talking about, and it's actually someone I, for the most part, lean toward liking. So, we're not going to get too many of those opportunities when it comes to this. These upcoming announcements, most likely. Other than what Sanders and maybe Gabbard, who isn't even, just kind of doing like a wiggle thing. Maybe we'll run, maybe won't. This is pretty much as good as it gets. And the ad that she put out that was talking about Dirk was problematic, because when you think of progressives and why they're so adamant about Bernie, for example, and sometimes they'll latch on to somebody else like a Ro Khanna, like Tulsi Gabbard, like a Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're interested in that particular candidate or those particular politicians because of their views on policy. So when you go around and you watch these people on places like Twitter and Facebook talking about, I want this person to run for president because they're strong. Like, what are you talking? That kind of stuff is like a foreign language to us. Or saying that because this person is female, they're going to appeal to this group for some reason. Like, everybody just has this thing in between their legs and it's going, oh, whoever has that, I'll vote for. So it's all comedic. But yeah, there were the other important stories that happened today. Just to kind of mention them briefly, I'll probably discuss them a little bit more and further tomorrow. Were Pompeo announcing that the U.S. would be lockstep with Israel no matter what we did in Syria as we're trying to pull out of there. Also, the report that even though Trump withdrew troops from Syria, we're apparently going to stay over there until April or I think a third or a fourth of this year. And again, no one's talking about it. Her video is very personal but not important. I want to hear the substance and policy. Yeah. And Dirk, that's why I used to, one of the things I oftentimes said defending her was I don't get how you could see her as a corporatist or, like most of the other Democrats, because she would closely align herself with Bernie. Obviously, she's still paying the consequence for not endorsing him 2 years ago. But when I watched that video, I instantly flashed back to watching Hillary's announcement video. It's the same basic strategy of let me try to make Americans fall in love with me by telling them about who I am and my background and all this stuff that has nothing to do with the pressing issues of the day. If I were running for the president or any office, for example, and I wanted to put an announcement video, I'm not going to be stupid enough to say, oh, let me tell you about my mother and my father and all the different schools I went to and all the places that they work. No, I'm going to start it off by saying I'm running because this is problematic to me. It's stupid that 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, that we get a D plus in our infrastructure, that student loan debt is over $1 trillion at this point, while we spend what was it, 717 billion on the military budget. These are things that if that you can mention so quickly, and people will know where you stand. And this is a senator who's doing this that's been around for over a full term now, ran multiple campaigns at this point, and thinks it's a smart idea to do her video with oh, let me tell you about my mother and my father, and the fact that my dad ended up becoming um, what was it, paralyzed or something that affected, just stuff that if you insult them over this, they say you're attacking their family. Um, but we the real reason it would annoy me, because this is literally the biggest job you can get in the U.S. and she just, yeah, it's a new Democrat style video. Exactly, it's almost like they brought back Bill. He came out of retirement to put a wig on and pretend to be a progressive again. I don't know, Dirk, if you ever saw that interview he did with Amy Goodman, where he called into her show to, I guess, tell people to vote for Al Gore, and then she just completely eviscerated him. It's like, I thought I was just calling to say something. It looks like I'm gonna have to defend my position. It was amusing. But going back to the thing with Warren, so when it comes to a face-to-face, and what's really amusing to me is that, because I mentioned this before, that the Republicans in the last 30 years of presidential elections have only won the popular vote one time since 1988 with the elder Bush. I'm very convinced that she can run any style of campaign and she'll be able to get more votes than Trump. Now, actually winning places like Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, but my confidence in her getting the popular vote is through the roof. Trump just pisses off too many people. For a coat. I never understood that. I thought you come here to hear me speak, and then somebody starts talking about how I look in the middle of something. I'm just start having the black screen. I might just, I might just draw a picture of me and then put it in front of the screen when we do a stream, and I'll put "brought to you by Brought Vulture" in the corner as my revenge. It isn't exactly a Happy New Year, Brought, if I can abridge your name in that manner. Like I mentioned earlier in the stream, we had the U.S. basically say we'll keep bootlicking for Israel no matter whether we're in Syria or not. which is always a bad thing because that literally means Israel's getting authorization to do whatever they want with no repercussions. And if you saw, I should have covered this probably instead of this story, but it's more sensational. Um, Kim Jong Un's New Year's Day speech, where he mentions the U.S. and the new strategy they'll have to pull in if we don't agree, and it's all that stuff is of higher consequence. Oh yeah, well, Dirk, they I'm very confident that's going to pass. It's inconceivable to me that even if those five Democrats that didn't vote for it this past time around decide, hey, well, let's be stupid again, the incoming 30 of them are going to just hopefully most of them will you know vote the right way again, hopefully. But we're surrounded, and I think I mentioned, if you saw the video, Dirk, there was one of them, and I forgot what his name is, that admitted he didn't even know what the bill was for. He just voted against it, said it wouldn't do anything. An actual lawmaker can't even figure out that we have the worst humanitarian crisis on our hands when we try to pull out of it a few years later. To answer your question, Broad, people can, but it's just, I mean, being stupid since 2014, the issue can't stop stupidity. You can stop it from being consequential if it gets voted out. I swear, sometimes I still look at that Senate scorecard for when the Sanders, Mike Lee, Chris Murphy resolution passed. I just think to myself, they really only could get 6 or 7 Republicans to say it's enough is enough. Let's stop bombing thousands of children and starving them to death. Just a few could flip over. And then what's even creepier is that I looked at the list of the ones who first voted against getting out of there in September of 2016, and it's like the same 2 Republicans, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and then like 4 other people. And I think Flake only voted against it because he's retiring. He has no consequences to face. Let's see. I have been watching much. Oh, I know, bro, Vulture. I know. Join the club. How else do people enjoy life if they're always worried about that type of stuff? Well, you just weigh the good with the bad. If somebody pulls up a funny video right now of a cat playing a piano, I can laugh at that and then still be cognizant of the fact that we literally have the worst outbreak of cholera in modern history going on right now, thanks to the good old folks at the U.S. federal government. Yeah, thank you for answering them, Dirk. But getting back to Warren's, quote unquote long shot bid, it's a long shot for pretty much anyone trying to get out of the primary, because with Bernie, we have to worry about them rigging it again, which there's no indication that they won't do. And if that happens, they'll get a repeat of what happened last time, where oh my God, I can't believe the people who didn't vote for the guy who voted for the guy that we rigged the primary against decided to sit out of the general with the person that we rigged the primary in favor of. Who would have thought? Most of the stuff is just overly serious with not much room to breathe. Yeah, important stuff is happening every day. I didn't even get to cover the story in Washington where they legalized raising I think it was the firearm age up to 21. And I was going to point out that even though they've done this, people are still going to be stupid enough to say it's inconsequential, when in fact, if it is, it's because Washington, like any other place with gun laws, is not an island, so you can bring weapons from one state over to there and discount their laws. Did Louisiana's water get fixed? I have to go look, Dirk. That'd be funny if I did a stream where you just stare at the side of my face and I just go and look up the news. And then it's just me whispering. You can't even tell what I'm saying. Oh no, Trump is going to be, or Syria is getting bombed. There are a few moments where people actually congratulate the presidents and such things, which are positive. Well, like I said, Bro Vulture, I apparently was like one of only 3 people that did not care what his rationale was for getting out of Syria. And because of that, I had my quote unquote liberal followers on places like Twitter and Instagram start losing their minds. And, the Trump derangement syndrome set in entirely. Um, because they can't accept the idea that someone says, hey, look, I'm not a fan of this person on most things, but they do something I like. I give them credit for it. It's just, being fair and balanced like Fox News. Same thing with Warren, where, now we've gotten to a point where if you go on her Twitter or any of these other places, there are still people who will just bring up her not endorsing Bernie on stuff that has nothing to do with that. Telling you, once you make a error or a mistake in the eyes of someone else, they'll just, because of the internet, you can just always be reminded of it. Got to look at what happens objectively. Yeah, but we live in the era of, I don't want to sound entirely getting into the other kind of material we do, but you can kind of get Dirk where thanks to the shift in culture, there is a push to get to Trump logic with emotion. Um, so if we bring up numbers, if we bring up that this is something we wanted and we didn't, if we get the same end result, it doesn't matter who does it, they go and lose their mind. Because logic is I'm happy that it got done. Emotion is I don't like who's doing it. They actually had a commentator on C-SPAN this morning. I was up when it came on, and during he's a conservative commentator. I wrote down his name is Steve DC or Dossie or something, but I put it in quotations. He said this is in reference to the tactics of the Democrats. Um, this is going to be a year of mudslinging and grandstanding. Count on it. And already, just from when Warren made the announcement, I was already seeing people do the mudslinging. Oh my God, this person is not Native American. Oh my God, and what is so problematic about that being said, by people who don't want her to run or that think she can't beat Trump or whatever, is that they act like anybody else they wouldn't do that to. So, for example, you go to Sanders and they will say, "Oh, well, he owns however many houses," or they pick. You get the idea. They pick a story that has been spread by tabloids and other forms of media, and they run with it and then pretend as if everything that comes out of your mouth is somehow not vindicated or otherwise rendered moot by that story. Just like if I was saying I'm thinking of voting for Trump because he's now pledging to pull out of all 6 of the remaining wars the U.S. is in, and then somebody comes up and says, "Oh, Trump cheated on all 3 of his wives with STD infected prostitutes." I'm gonna go, what does that have to do with anything? But again, in their minds, their heads, right? These people who already don't like the person they're trying to, put out this negative information about, they think if they keep bringing this up, it's going to erase everything else. Same thing with Dinesh D'Souza, who I just realized I've never mentioned on it at all. That's a person who, if you go and read any of his material, and you go and look up any of his stuff, what does he talk about? He talks about the history of the Democratic Party, which no one dismisses, but he'll do this with the idea, or at least thinking that he's getting people to now suddenly ignore all the other stuff that's going on. So, this is actually very similar to the I don't know if you remember this, Dirk, when we did the Candace, not the Candace Owens, the Ocasio-Cortez videos. We read the comments that were on Fox News's different, obsessed driven videos about her. There was a person who said that Candace Owens would beat her in a debate, and I sat there and I played the Joe Rogan clip where she couldn't dismiss climate change, or was just saying she didn't believe the scientists because no reason. And I brought that up, or played that clip rather, because it was indicative of what is so problematic about politics now, where people will find a story or a theme to latch onto and then completely ignore everything else. She's another one that, the two of them will go out and talk about the evil Democrats from 1860 and onward, but to actually sit there and talk about climate change and the fact that you've had 97% of the world's scientists who said human activity contributes to the change of the climate, to the environment differences over time, they can't dispute. So they look for this other stuff to try and focus on and drive away from the main point or from actual issues. Yeah, I made that same face. Does not he now point that there was a political switch with the party norms? But even if it wasn't, Dirk, what does the past of the Democrats from over 100 years ago have to do with climate change, or the fact that we're bombing 7 countries right now? It doesn't, and that's that way of thinking. I'm bringing it up because it's exactly what is already happening to Warren within a day of her announcing an exploratory committee. They're talking about this Native American crap like it's actually going to influence someone or change the minds of the people around them. It's like, and guys, you gotta understand with Trump supporters, at least the worst ones are the ones that are kind of into that trolling crap. They go after people for stuff that their own guy does. Like, for example, does anyone remember when Trump used to that clip of him pretending to be a journalist? He called himself Baron something for himself. I could easily say he wasn't his own publicist. He was lying about his identity. But that one instance, that little brief thing in time, has nothing to do with any of his positions. Democrats get the Wall Street money, Republicans get oil money. Yeah, they keep playing the corruption game, and that was something that Warren has talked about. Um, and if she talks more about that and keeps playing the angle of everything is screwed up, which it is, she would be able to pull this off. But in trying to appeal to the corporate Democrats that still influence the primary process, you're going to see her be wishy-washy. Let's not forget when she said the primary against Bernie was rigged, and then she completely flipped her position within days of saying that. It's not like 20 or 30 years later you changed your mind. This is literally a short time later. Oh no, maybe I don't know. So we'll see what happens. What a way to start off the year. Again, these other stories are probably more important, but I couldn't pretend like this didn't happen. She's probably still the second or third best candidate out of the Democratic lineup, my opinion. I'm waiting for him to. Oh, Dirk, I actually had a person who said crossplay. I know you're serious. We're talking to. Oh, oh, I didn't see your first comment. I've never played Fortnite before. I have to look it up. Maybe you can leave a comment explaining it. But Dirk, I actually had a person who said, I don't see why is Bernie not announcing, and they act as though it. I mean, I swear people have the shortest memories in the world. He announced his campaign in May of 2015. Okay, that was. Well, if we go off of that period as kind of an indicator of when he'll announce, we're still 5 months away from that happening. So I wouldn't count him out yet. It's really comedic. Yeah, all odds against his back. And that's that's why when I watch these commentators, like that's again the theme of the Twilight Zone. We literally have this like bizarro world of commentators. Let me explain this to you. If you put facts up in front of my face, my position usually morphs to whatever the facts present to me. So for example, when people said Sanders could not beat Clinton, and then they'll go and say, see, he couldn't do it, that's why he didn't win. But then, you go and you look at the fact that he had little name recognition and then overperformed in places like Michigan, where she was leading in the polls all the way up until the day before the election. So it's those kind of things where when I hear them talk about he only appeals to a certain fringe group, and then you get this record turnout to support him during a primary, let alone a general election. I don't buy it, and it's because of what I saw 2 years ago. I told you, revisionist history is a really horrible thing because it means people are going to look you in the eye and pretend as if what actually happened did not happen. Um, you get these people who say that he screwed up Hillary in the primary, when in fact, after he lost to her, he not only endorsed her, but told people not to vote for third parties, told people that she was going to fight corruption with the Supreme Court, nominee that would pledge to overturn Citizens United. I can still pull this stuff up. And I vividly remember it because, again, I was there. I was active at that time. We still have my content up from then where, I was talking about it. So you get the point. When they play the revisionist history, whether it's on, his chances of winning or if he screwed her up, I don't buy it because I saw it. Remember the Benjamin Franklin quote, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. So, I kept getting told all this stuff, and I see these articles from back then and remember video of him from back then, and endorsing her. So, and that's off topic, but it still goes back to the thing of the revisionist history now for Warren is going to be, oh, she can't win because she's too extreme. But then the person that you ran who was considered moderate got smashed, or at least didn't win the election. So you get the idea. Anyways, it's been fun. Thank you for watching. We'll probably do one of these tomorrow, given all these important stories. Have you also heard about being in a meeting with other new that was led by Wall Street lobbyists? I have not, but you can post a link to that article. I'll talk about it. I'll give my opinion on it, Dirk. It's any new information I welcome. So again, you can leave this stuff if you want to. Thank you.